Welcome everybody to part 2 of Gianni Gameday's double header. Today we're going to talk about the Stanford Cardinal taking on the USC Trojans. Now, despite good wins last weekend, both teams are kind of licking their wounds because of key offensive injuries. Which team is going to continue their winning ways? Which team will win the 99th meeting between these two schools? Well, let's talk about it on this week's episode of Gianni Gameday. Gianni Gameday. On this week's segment of Know Your History, I want to highlight an article by David Kiefer on GoStanford.com where he talks about the origins of Stanford football. It's a fascinating read, so I suggest it to all you college football fans out there. In 1891, the first remnants of a football team started on the farm. Cal challenged Stanford to a game, but due to inexperience, Stanford declined. Now, after some practice and fast improvement, Stanford issued their own challenge to Cal for a game in the spring. 10,000 tickets were sold, although a whopping 20,000 fans showed up for the game. A freshman student manager was one of the minds behind the first big game and collected the fare for all the fans without tickets. That freshman student manager would later become the 31st president of the United States, Herbert Hoover. Hoover and an organizer from Cal couldn't even watch the game because they were busy counting the coins from the extra fans. It took them all night to count and split the $30,000 in gate money. The revenue from the first big game would later fund the football team for Stanford the next year. And now it's time for the breakdown. And as I mentioned earlier, both teams are dealing with some injuries this week. JT Daniels, starting quarterback for USC, tore his ACL last week against Fresno State, and he is out for the year. So freshman quarterback Kedon Slovis will take over the reins. Now it's going to be tough for him. They're probably going to try to put him in position to succeed. A lot of screens, a lot of runs, which is not a bad call because they have, like I said last week, talented wide receivers who can catch the ball in short range and just scoot up the field for a touchdown. And they have a phenomenal running game, which you saw last week in the second half against Fresno State. So I think they're really going to lean on their offensive line, kind of lean on their running backs to kind of try to get the job done for the Trojans. As far as Stanford goes, they saw their starting quarterback, KJ Costello, take a forearm to the head, and he is on concussion protocol. So he was out last week for the second half of the game, and he is questionable for this game. So we don't even know if he's going to play. And Stanford's best offensive lineman, Walker Little, he had an injury last week too. So he's going to be out for this game. So on the offensive line, they're going to have to shuffle things around. Stanford's usually really effective on the run game, despite last year, which was kind of like an outlier. But they usually kind of lean on the run game to kind of get the job done as well. But now they have to shift some things on the offensive line, so I don't know how effective it's going to be. And the passing game, they're kind of missing some key targets like they had last year with J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. So I don't know. The Stanford offense is going to be a mystery. Last week, they were only able to muster up like 10 points offensively, and then late in the game, they had a sack fumble that they recovered in the end zone to get them that extra 7 points. Because of all the mysteries with the injuries and some of the offensive struggles both teams have had, I think it's going to be a defensive game. Both defenses are really pumped up and really strong, really stout, so I think it's going to make it tough for each other's offenses to score. So I'm predicting a low-scoring game and some hard hitting in the Coliseum this weekend. And for the final segment of my doubleheader analysis, it's prediction time. Now, on the last video, I said that battle between UCLA and SDSU was the hardest predictions I've had to make. But now I'm starting to think that this video's predictions are even tougher than that. Like I said, because of the injuries, because of all the uncertainty, this is going to be a tough one. Now, something inside of me tells me that Stanford is going to edge out USC and get the victory. Even though Stanford hasn't won at the Coliseum since 2015, something tells me that I should go with Stanford. I really believe in David Shaw. I think he's going to get his team focused and ready when he goes down to Southern California, and I believe that they will win 24-17. 21. Thank you for joining me for parts 1 and 2 of Gianni Football's analysis of my double header this weekend. We got 4 California teams lacing it up in Los Angeles this Saturday. Boy, am I excited. We got California football live and in person, and Gianni Football's gonna be there. Are you? If you're not, then you better be watching, because this is gonna be a classic college football Saturday.